Ladies and gentlemen, days after a US Homeland report stated that in the last 3 years, the number of applications for asylum from Indians has increased by nearly 855%. That's right. The Ministry of External Affairs has said asylum seekers, that's India's Ministry of External Affairs has said, asylum seekers while applying for asylum to a foreign government denigrate the nation and society to obtain personal gains. Minister of State for External Affairs Kirtivardhan Singh, while responding to a question by MP Kapil Sibal, also added, India being a democratic country provides avenues for everyone to redress their grievances lawfully. In 2023, over 52,000 people from India applied for asylum in other countries. This is according to the UNHCR data. Now, to put this large number, 52,000, in a larger context of how much of India does it represent, this number is almost 0.004% of all residents, of all Indians. The most common destination countries have been United States, Canada, and the United Kingdoms. But over 86% of these asylum applications are rejected. The most successful, though, have been the refugees in Canada and Ireland. And by the way, each of these countries that I've mentioned are countries that are witnessing a serious political, governmental pushback on policies around granting asylum as well as illegal immigrants. Interestingly, the United States Homeland report that saw a whopping jump in Indian asylum seekers states more than half of them are from Gujarat. And just look at the numbers. Indian asylum seekers surged from 4,330 in 2021 to 41,330 in 2023 to the US. So what's the motive and how deep is this crisis? I'm being joined at this point by my guest, Rabinder Sachdev, who's a Indo-US policy expert, Prabhu Dayal, former ambassador. Very good evening to both of you. I'm also being joined by Kamaruzzaman Chaudhary, who's a political analyst, as well as Jasmine Santewala, who's a spokesperson for BJP. Very good evening to both of you as well. Well, my first question straight up to you, Mr. Prabhu Dayal. Ambassador, what's really happening? How do you look at the numbers that the United States has said? Of course, we'll get to India's response and how India looks at it in a bit. But just look at the surge. It's 855% rise in asylum seekers to the United States in a matter of 3 years.
Well, Sneha, let me tell you very categorically that these are not genuine asylum seekers. They are not people who are fleeing from political persecution. These are simply people who are looking for economic opportunities. And I can tell you this because I have served 4.5 years as Consul General in New York. And I met a number of people who told me very frankly that they had applied for asylum because there was no other way that they could continue to stay in the United States legally. And I must tell you that many of these people who admitted to seeking the asylum route were Sikhs. Because, you know, after 1984, there was a sort of a hue and cry as if Sikhs were being persecuted in India. And countries like the United States, Canada, and the United Kingdom opened their doors to such people and allowed them in. And in due course, listened to their pleas. They fell prey to their false stories of persecution here and granted them visas as asylees. So this is a clear case where these so-called, lenient policies of these countries, which pay heed to persecution abroad, these countries are falling victim to their own policies and they are being made suckers by these so-called asylees. There is no political persecution. And I can tell you, people have told me
Mr. Prabhu Dayal, you brought in the fact that most of these people who have sought historically asylum largely have been Sikhs. But since you mentioned that, let me just bring into what the United States has said. For the current data that they have given out, the 855% surge in asylum seekers from India, maximum are from Gujarat. So how do you explain that shift? For a long time, we've heard that most of them are Sikhs. It started off like that. It went off like that. Punjab has had the brunt of it, has had the face of it. All of that is something that we've heard a lot. And then you have about, now, at least data specifically speaking, it may be debatable. It may be argued for and against. But nonetheless, at least the US data very clearly stating more than half of it are from Gujarat.
Let me tell you, Sneha, that many of these people went on tourist visas to meet their relatives, but they never came back. They stayed on illegally. And when there was a sort of a situation where they would be forced to go back, they took the asylum route. These are not genuine political asylees. These are people who are somehow wanting to stay on in the United States. And since there is no other route available to them, they are taking the asylum route. Believe me, these are not people who are saying the truth. These are people who are trying to dupe the United States system to stay on. I met a number of Gujaratis. They had stayed there for years and years as illegal immigrants. And when the crackdown started, and then where they were being rounded up and asked to go back, they said, well, we have fled our country due to persecution, etc., and we want to stay on here as asylees. This is the real story.
Okay. Rabinder Sachdev, if I could get you in. We just heard Ambassador speak. Now, Rabinder Sachdev, there's a change of guard in the United States. You have Trump, who's going to come in at any point. There's this huge crackdown on illegal immigrants that's expected. And then you have these numbers at the backdrop of how there's a 855% surge in asylum seekers, about how most of them are from a certain part of the country. Now, when all of this is given and you have the backdrop of how a refugee or an asylum seeker is officially defined, the fact also remains, in United States alone for that matter, at least it's possibly the third largest unauthorized group of nationalities in the country. If you look at such a large number, how does it impact one, Indo-US relations, particularly in context of people who are living there and working there?
Thank you. Thank you, Sneha. Several things, right? I mean, in the short term, yes, definitely when Trump takes office, if he cracks down, which all chances are, the way he's talking about, illegal Indian citizens out there would also be affected. And that could have some impact, at least emotional impact, on US-India relations, right? The numbers are not known, but anywhere between 7 to 800,000 to a million or more are illegal Indians living in the United States. That's one. So if any steps are taken against them under a Trump administration, radical steps could be, it could lead to some emotional, reactions by our folks in India, their families and all, which could then translate into pressures on the Indian government to do something. The Indian government, what it can do or cannot do, we do not know, but probably not much, because it's an internal matter of their own policies, which will apply to all citizens or all individuals of any country, right? That's one. Secondly, I mean, there are, layers in this. We are talking, let's say, illegal Indians living who are already inside the US. There is another data, like last year, I think 23, about 90,000 Indians have been arrested or, held up by the border agencies of the US who were from India, 90,000. Now, these 90,000 who are there, as Ambassador Dayal is saying, many of them are going for economic opportunities, right? But yes, among them, some are asylum seekers. So what happens is that when these guys are caught, even those who are going for economic reasons, they claim that they are coming for a political asylum because they are being prosecuted or persecuted in their home countries. There is another bit of data, somewhat where you were talking about, that in the last 10 years or in the 10-year period from 2009 to 2019, of all the people who apply for political asylum across the board in the US, about 20 to 25% were approved. That means about 70 to 75% of the applications were denied because the US thought, or US authorities thought, that those guys are not valid political asylum seekers. So from the numbers which are there, it seems therefore about
Correct.
20 to 25% could be, if not genuine, but let's say maybe 10 to 15% are genuine with political, issues from wherever they are, not counting India, I'm saying in general, that's out there. Now, so within
Okay.
the US, yes, we will see, within weeks of the Trump administration, depends how they take it up. They may set up detention camps and all of that. How that plays out, that will have some, impact on US-India. It won't have impact on US-India relations. It will become an issue in US-India relations. Let's put it that way, right? Now, as to the folks, so what we could actually see is that, by the way, once this illegal deportation starts, we may see a spike. More Indians who are living illegally in the United States would claim political asylum, right? In order to continue staying on there. They may say that, okay, I'm living here illegally. I was completely under the radar
That's
or beyond the radar. But since
And
you're,
concerning.
okay, fine, you're asking me who am I? I'm here living without documents and all. But yeah, I want political asylum. So I will not be surprised if out of these, a million or so illegals, if theoretically all of them are kind of, put together, more than 10% would ask for political asylum, or maybe 20% would ask for political asylum.
Right. Very quickly, Prabhu Dayal, back to you before I go to my other two panelists. I'll give you a minute. Put this in context, please. When India says, when the Ministry of External Affairs, the MOS goes on to say that this is nothing but but denigrating the nation they belong to, denigrating India, because India has a strong, robust democratic setup that can look at and redress grievances whatsoever. This has largely been India's stand, but why is it coming off too sharply, considering often it's also debated, pushed back, that listen, this is not any way genuine political or religious asylum seekers?
Well, Mr. Robin Sachdeva has been absolutely correct when he pointed out that many of these people who are staying beyond their visa, who have now become illegal immigrants, will apply for political asylum because, it's like a drowning man clinging to a straw. They lose nothing by applying for it. In fact, they don't care if they are denigrating India's image. They just want to somehow stay on. The basic cause of people seeking asylum in such large numbers is economic. There are no economic opportunities for them here. They think that those economic opportunities exist. Many, many people have stayed for decades illegally in the United States, and they've got jobs. They work as shop hands and all kinds of things. Nobody asks any questions. The police don't catch people, stop them and ask them for their documentation. They continue to live. Now that there's some kind of a crackdown, there is a spurt in the number of people applying for visas. And as Mr. Robin says, they've said, there will be a spike in the number of people asking for asylum visas because these people are afraid that they will be deported. They don't want to be deported.
All right. Okay, if I can get in Ms. Jasmine Sandhwalia at this point. Ms. Jasmine, you just heard our panelists speak. You've also heard the government of India speak. How do you look at both of them together? Because everybody is saying this is not genuine cases of political or religious asylums in most cases. They are not genuine cases. That's what the government of India has claimed. And then you have the other side, the flip side, that says, listen, most of this is because there are no economic opportunities. And then you have the US saying most of them are from Gujarat.
You see, Sneha, I would kind of agree with the prior two speakers. And I want to very categorically say that I come from Punjab, from where a large number of Sikhs applied for political asylum. And my husband is a lawyer in Los Angeles. And I can quote that, there is a huge a pattern that when people have migrated after 1984, they were not persecuted religiously, but they went on the donkey route and they go and apply for a political asylum in pursuit and in hope of the American dream. And I would call them not political asylum seekers, but economic immigrants, people who want a better future. And when the government says, and I would say any sane Indian, any proud Indian would say that they do denigrate our status and our image in front of the world, that we are persecuting. And if you look at Punjab or Gujarat for that matter, there is peace, there is tranquility, there's nothing wrong. Nobody's talking about Khalistan in Punjab. I live in Punjab, in Kapurthala. So nobody's talking, but unfortunately, in America, there is a certain lobby and that caters to them, and these people go and apply for these visas. When you talk about economic opportunities and you say Gujarat, Gujarat is a very prosperous and an advanced state, and I feel that the personal aspirations of people, personal greed, personal betterment and pursuit of a better life takes them to foreign lands and to America and Canada, and they care two hoots when they say that they are being persecuted back home in India and they're being discriminated.
Is it
and
because the economic opportunities that they have back home, say in states like Gujarat or Punjab or even other parts of India, cannot offer them what the United States offers?
You see, since unfortunately in Punjab, I would be honest enough to admit that in the last 10 years, no progress has happened and there is no really good revenue generating. And Congress was ruling Punjab
the numbers
for 5 years.
are not for Punjab more, even though you're speaking more of Punjab, maybe for the reason that you are from Punjab. We're also talking about Gujarat, where everybody is talking about Gujarat making strides economically, but we're talking about data from just last 3 years, Ms. Jasmine Sandewala. So there has to be some acknowledgement somewhere. If it's not genuine political, allow me, if it's not genuine political, religious asylum seekers, then it is a lack of economic opportunities.
Nay, it is like that I can be very happy with 5,000 and somebody else wants $500,000. Their personal aspirations, personal greed. And it is not that there is lack of opportunity in Gujarat. Gujarat is better placed than Punjab, I would say. But at the same time, this is a global world. We can't deny, people have different aspirations. You can't deny that. And you can't control that. But unfortunately, when they go and paint an image of India and lie, and they say that they are being persecuted, that is really, really wrong. Because they are not in Gujarat, there is peace. Who is persecuting a Gujarati in Gujarat? So it is really a personal choice of fleeing to a better life, pursuing a better life and wanting more in life. And it's a very complex situation. And the government has made a statement that unfortunately these children or these people do not understand that they denigrate India when they go abroad and lie about this.
Kamruzman Chaudhary, please respond. Kamruzman Chaudhary, please come in, please respond.
Yeah, Sneha, first and foremost, we all know how this entire migration is happening. I will not go and tell that exactly the migration is resulting in asylum seeking out there. We all know why this is happening. But let us address the elephant in the room tonight. When we speak about migration, in our younger days, we knew there was a term called brain drain that was happening from India, where exceptional talents were migrating to the US in search of greener pastures. But that was legally. H-1B visas are still being issued out there. People used to migrate there. But now what's happening is a trend is there that the people from more prosperous states in India, like Gujarat, which was supposed to be a model for the rest of the country, the much touted Gujarat model that Narendra Modi, he advertised all along. Now, why are the people from Gujarat migrating to the United States and the Western world? That is the question. You need to address the elephant in the room. Why I said this? Because the India's per GDP rank is 129th in the world. That means the people, the aspirational class, the youth of this country are not able to cater to that much of their aspirations in Gujarat or in the rest of the country in India right now. The government has failed to provide an ecosystem to this youth wherein their aspiration can be blossomed. But that's one point out here. The other point out here is that lack of opportunities in India. The people out here, they feel that the crony capitalism, the monopolistic business trends that we are witnessing over the last 10 years has resulted in youth not trying to go into the more riskier entrepreneurship within India. These are multiple factors and reasons why I say this.
Jasmine Sandewala, please respond. I mean, look at this. This is what usually is the arguments from between the opposition and the ruling. But then this time you also have what even Kamruzman Chaudhary is speaking about, the data that has come out about what the trend shows. So if you have what a political dispensation calls a more well-to-do state, a better equipped state like Gujarat, and then data shows that most of the people from there are asylum seekers, how else would you tell the opposition the reason behind it except for what Kamruzman Chaudhary is claiming?
You see, I want to say that we are a third world country, and we are a nation of 1 billion people. Under no circumstances can the government provide job opportunities for each and every Indian citizen. But look at from where we started and where we have come. Since 2014 only, if you see, the economic growth in India has surged phenomenally, which it could not in the last 25 years or 30 years. We are the fifth largest economy in the world, and very soon in 2027, we are aspiring to be the third largest economy in the world. But like I said, these are personal aspirations of younger people wanting the American dream, the Canadian dream, and they migrate to the US and Canada or to certain European countries in hope and in pursuit of a better life. And they're entitled. But at the same time, nobody entitles them to go and denigrate India and say that they are being religiously discriminated and persecuted, which they are not. And there is a whole nexus in the US and in Canada where the lawyers have this
basically Sneha, if you permit me, Sneha, one very important point that I want to bring out here.
In San Francisco and in California.
Jasmine ji, ek baar sun lijiye, I understood.
Miss Jasmine, allow Kamruzman Chaudhary to speak.
No. Basically, you need to be very much realistic and with the reality as of now. When Israel fought after the Palestinian labor, where people are dying on a daily basis, then, yeah, am I audible now? Yeah.
Yes, now.
Basically, Sneha, the point that I want to put out here is the Israelis, when they advertised for labor from India, it was the Indian governments of Haryana, of Uttar Pradesh, of Uttarakhand, of other states. They facilitated the young youth of our country and sent them to Israel for petty jobs out there in Israel, construction labor jobs. Is our government, which is aiming to become a 5 trillion economy, not provide for the youth of this country? Why is the ecosystem in the government failing to give a aspirational class their future in India? The only reason that the people they are going to the US or the Western world is for the question of survival, for economic. Now, India is the largest, supplying the largest people who are illegal migrants across the Western world. It's a shameful thing for us, Sneha, and the government must address it immediately. It's not a question of Gujaratis or Bengalis, but the point is that the government has failed to provide these people an alternative within the Indian job market, let's say, or the entrepreneurial market in India. And that's where my question lies.
Mr. Chaudhary, I do want to answer you. And I want to answer you.
I will have to get in Miss Jasmine to respond. But Jasmine, give us a few minutes. Give us a few minutes. I'll get in you to respond. But Rabinder Sachdev, to the political back and forth that you've heard in the panel right now, does this even reflect the discourse that happens within the Indian diaspora in the United States or in the larger sense?
Interesting question. It does to some extent. Definitely it does to some extent. And also, let's be candid, out of the total who claim political asylum, yes, many are seeking for economic reasons, but there is definitely a percentage, some percentage, who are firstly driven by the need for a political asylum. For whatever reasons, they may be misinformed, misguided, whatever it be. There are numbers of people from India who are out there, as is from other countries also, who are driven by reasons of politics. I mean, I'll give you a case study right now. God willing, it should not ever happen. But let's say Manipur, what's happening between the two communities out there, right? Now, somebody from one or either of the communities could be, figuring out going to the US or Europe or wherever and claiming political asylum, saying that, I'm facing such a situation in my country, I want an asylum. So there are chances and political asylees also in this mix, but the overwhelming number is without doubt the ones for economic reasons. Now, one. As far as the Indian diaspora is concerned, yes, this discussion does happen there. Indian diaspora folks do know, at least some of them, several of them. Also, remember, at times, I don't want to be a classist kind of a guy, but there are different classes at times. Most of the diaspora in the US is probably professionals, right? They are not much aware or sensitized to the issues of this layer of the diaspora, which are, let's say, construction workers, drivers, or illegals, so to say. So between all of that, but it's a fact that people are knowing, and also more so over now, with the huge focus on immigration, illegal immigration in the US, with the Trump campaign, and over the past 4 or 5 years, this issue has been gaining a lot of traction. So the issue of illegal immigrants in the US is a matter of concern for the Indian American community also very much.
All right, I think we'll take a very short break at this point. We'll return to the debate right after a very short break.
In association with
Welcome back. We're discussing about how India has said that those seeking asylum to foreign countries are denigrating their nation. Mr. Prabhu Dayal, let me very quickly come to you at this point. We just heard Mr. Rabinder Sachdev say, and he spoke about how this entire issue of those seeking asylum, legally, illegally, wrongfully, truthfully, whatever the argument may be, is a very big concern. Now, one of the things that the opposition has been questioning and claiming is that the government is not doing enough to sort this out. As a person who's represented India, how do you look at that?
Sneha, the fault is that of the people. Unless we stop breathing like we are, no problem can be solved. It is such a shameful thing that people in positions of authority don't seem to realize that the population of this country is spiraling out of control. And if the population grows at this rate, I'm afraid there cannot be jobs provided. All the panelists are agreed on this, that many of these asylum seekers are trying to get asylum because of economic reasons. Now, a question was asked by Mr. Kamaruddin Chowdhury that why can't the government of India look at this matter and the serious problem that it is posing and try to provide more jobs? I think people who are in positions of authority and people who are responsible politicians, even if they are not in a position of authority, even if they represent a party which is not in power, they must try and do something to stop this population growth. You know, it is really bizarre how the population of our country is allowed to grow at this rate. And then we have thousands of people lining up on the streets and pretending as if they're not getting jobs because it's the government's fault. It is not the government's fault. Ultimately, it is the people's fault. The people have to check this population growth if the problem is to be solved.
Sneha, I'm amused.
Congressman Chaudhary, do you want to come in at this point? I mean, of course, the ambassador has brought in a whole different angle, and that is of the population of a country, population explosion. But nonetheless, I mean, that's the right of people for whatever reasons it is. Can you really absolve the government out of this?
No, Sneha, why I was telling, I respect the honorable diplomat out here. He knows much more than I know. That's true. But tomorrow he might even criticize the women folk of the country for eating away the jobs of the male population of the country. That's a bizarre argument, I feel, Sneha, on the other side. You see the plight of Indians to, if we take it in a different direction to this debate tonight, I say in 2022, around 2.5 lakh people gave away their Indian citizenship. There is another angle, another dimension to this entire debate. Why is it so that the people want to live? If India is a city, is a land of dreams, where we are going for a 5 trillion economy, if we are prescribing ourselves to be a Vishwaguru in the near future, why are the illegal Indians occupying the Western world in such huge numbers? And the numbers are increasing every day. There has to be a systematic fault that is happening in India with which most of the people, they want to search for greener pastures outside India. We need to put a stop on this. You see the last few days, how the government lives in a mode of denial mode. A plane load of illegal immigrants were deported back to India. How many of that has hit the headlines in the country? This is a very serious discussion and debate should have happened instead of the usual Mandir Masjid disputes that we are debating every night out here. But no, the government is oblivious to the actual problem that is
But to be
facing
fair,
the
Mr.
society.
Kamruzman, it's not like the opposition also went all gung-ho about it. I mean, we
Yes.
may really like to fire on the shoulder of the government because they are the ruling establishment. It's not like the opposition were all up in arms and made a hue and cry about it and wanted to debate about it. So I think that moral high ground really doesn't exist. But nonetheless, to the points that you have said, let me just get in Jasmine Sandhwalia to respond. Jasmine Sandhwalia, the profile of those, the nature of those, the regions from where all of these asylum seekers are now emerging is vastly changing over the last decade. Now, at least there seems to be some sense of some data that has emerged. To whatever point Mr. Kamruzman has said that there doesn't seem to be political will. How do you respond to that?
You see, how can a political will be there? People have their own aspirations. This is not a communist rule. This is not like George Orwell's novel of 1984 that you control every human being. If somebody wants to go abroad, how can you stop that in a democracy? It is a very, very complex issue. You cannot control the people. The government cannot, in a totalitarian attitude, control the people. People will always, since the early 1900s till late 1800s, people have been going to Canada. There was Kamamara Ghatu, that ship which sank. Indians have always been going abroad for their own personal aspirations. And when Mr. Chaudhary says that it is the government's duty is to provide remunerative jobs and opportunities and equal opportunities for everybody. But we have to be very realistic that we are a nation of 1 billion people. Let's be realistic. Let's not live in denial. We are a third world country.
But those are the people who have voted a government to power. As realistic as we may want to, I don't understand that really, because when you're going and contesting elections, nobody is saying that we are a country of 1 billion. You know, fair point. I mean, the ambassador made the point. You are making the point. Yes, the population is huge, but when a government comes to power, they definitely know because those are the votes that have got them to power. This debate can go on, and there are all sides to it. And as many of the panelists have said, this has a deep history to it. Nonetheless, it has no reason for it to continue because while the government of India does say that it is hugely denigrating for a nation, for people who are seeking asylums in foreign nations, mostly the government has claimed for reasons that do not justify it. The other side of it is this is only seeing a surge, only seeing an increase. And beyond rhetoric, one does need to see within about how this needs to be curbed, because if it is denigrating, it is also shameful. Thank you very much to our panelists for joining us at this point. Kamruzman Chaudhary, Robinder Sachdev, Prabhu Dayal, as well as Jasmine Sandhwalia. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Time for a very short break. On the other side,